In this module, we're going to be focusing all of our energy on the creation and application of the subdivision smoothing algorithm. So what is subdivision smoothing and why would we want to use it inside of a traditional 3D modeling workflow? As an example here, I've brought open this little turtle. This is a little sculpture I've made for my 3D sculpting class. And this really takes advantage of that subdivision smoothing algorithm. Subdivision smoothing asks the computer to smooth out the mesh. It adds dynamically new polygons on the inside. So for wherever there's one polygon, the moment we start adding an iteration of the algorithm into the mesh, it transforms the detail from one polygon into 4, and then 16, and then so on and so forth, logarithmically across the entirety of our surface. So let me show you what this looks like. If I zoom in here on my little turtle's face, you can see that geometrically, it's pretty low res. There's a lot of faceted edges in here. Often, it's a whole lot easier to construct and build our sculptures and any of our 3D models for that matter at a much lower resolution. I love to say, mo polys, mo problems, right? The more polygons that we have in our scene, often the more challenges we're going to have in front of us. The subdivision smoothing algorithm allows us to infuse more geometry into the mesh without physically having to go in and add more edge loops or surfaces or verts. Let me show you how it works. I've gone ahead and just applied the subdivision smoothing modifier to this object. And let me simply just turn it on. Now, before I turn it on, I want you to look very closely at the topology of the mesh itself. It's pretty basic, right? There's a lot of faceted edges in here. It's pretty low res. This is with the subdivision smoothing off. This is just a traditional 3D model, if you will. But the moment we start adding in some new modifiers and layering on some new technology, boop, like that, now we start to smooth out the mesh. In my imagination, what's happening is the mesh is now under tension and all the polygons are being pulled into the center as if there's a gigantic black hole in the middle of the mesh. And as you can see here, things are starting to smooth out. The big advantage of this is that we get to increase and decrease the number of polygons dynamically with our subdivision levels. Here it is at a version level of 2, and I can even take it down to version 1 or level 1, excuse me, of the subdivision modifier. Now, why we want to do this is that we can dynamically add more polygons based on the distance the model is to the camera. For example, if you look at the modifier over here, we have a levels viewport level, subdivision level, excuse me, at 1, at a level 1, every single polygon is transformed into 4 polygons. It's dynamically adding that in there. However, it's disconnected from the render level. So I could have a render level set to 3, and let's just take a picture of this real fast. Excuse me for a moment. I want to change my ability to go in and just change my render camera. Something like that. There we go. Let's render off this picture. It's going to take a second. There's a lot of polygons in here. Yeah, and it's starting to look pretty smooth. However, if this object is super far away from camera, maybe we don't need it smoothed out that much. Well, I can reduce the quality at render to a different level, re-render the shot, have it be a little bit more efficient, but still get that same generalized look and feel. We can even turn it off at render as well, which gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility. If you look at high-end computer graphics in the television and feature film world, you don't see any sort of faceted edge like you see here going around the boundaries of our turtle. And everywhere you see the telltale signs of polygons. That's because at the television and the feature film world, they've turned on this subdivision smoothing modifier to smooth out all the polygons and ensure that they are just perfect. No faceted edges going across the surface of the mesh. We can build upon this idea by adding in some other modifiers that take advantage of this entire smoothing algorithm. Let me just pardon the dust for a moment. I'm going to turn this off and jump back into a 3D view. There we go. I'm also going to turn off the visibility of my camera just for a moment. That way we can really start to see the power of these other modifiers that we have available for us in the scene. I'm going to turn off the modifier in my modifier stack, and I'm going to explore the details of the multi-res modifier. The multi-res modifier is fundamentally doing the exact same thing, but allows us to continue to sculpt and add interior detail into the mesh itself. And this speaks very directly to the core power of this idea of subdivision, is that we can dynamically add more geometry without having to physically go in and slice up the mesh and hard code in, if you will, all the geo. Remember, this is what the geometry looks like. right? This is the model that I created. And then through the process of dynamically adding more geometry through my subdivision or multi-res modifier, I can add more detail. Let me show you what it looks like. I'm going to go back into object mode real fast. The multi-res modifier is in object mode. We'll check it out. I've added more detail. At viewport or at multi-res level 1, this is the level of detail on the mesh. But as I go up, I've added more. At every level, I've sculpted in more detail. And each level gives me more geometry to play with until we get to the point up here at level 6, where we now actually start having a tremendous amount of high-frequency detail sculpted into the mesh. All the scales, the scratches, the surface details for the entire turtle are preserved in this multi-res subdivision surface modifier, which is pretty cool. It's not pretty cool. It's very cool because it allows us to dynamically change the number of polygons in the geometry without having to go in and remodel and hard code in all that geometry. Subdivision surface modeling is not only just a popular workflow, it is the workflow of choice when it comes to rendering high-end 3D models for the television and the feature film world. As one might imagine, it takes some processing power to do this, so we have not yet really seen a widespread adoption of this technology in the interactive space. So if you're making a model for a 3D game, you're probably not going to be using subdivision surfaces. However, we can very easily distill and bake down all these modifiers through the application of these modifiers in our pull-down menu over here and preserve all this wonderful information in true polygons. Right now, all these polygons that are being that have been added to produce all these details are coming from the magic of our subdivision surface and multi-res modifiers. They are a beautiful addition to our workflow, one that we're going to take advantage of to produce the illusion of high-quality models with low geometric cages.